Going to start with, I think, what was the dominant AI story of the past 7 days, and that is the Pope. When the Pope speaks, a lot of people listen.
What does the Pope actually know about AI? Is the Pope vibe coding in his office? I can fully get behind no nukes in the world, but AI has a lot of benefits for humanity. There needs to be control outside of a big tech, not just inside big tech, because there's a conflict of interest there, obviously.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Slow Takes. This is the Substack Live run by me, Sam Illingworth from Slow AI, and also by
Lior from Exploring ChatGPT.
I always think there's 5 interesting stories, but I think 5 particularly interesting stories on a real wide scope of topics here as well. Going to start with, I think, what was the dominant AI story of the past 7 days, and that is the Pope. So last week, the Pope released his Encyclical. So for people who don't know, the Pope is, I would hope people know who the Pope is. The Pope is, I was about to say he's the leader of the free world. He's not. He's the leader of the Catholic Church. Estimates vary, but I would say there's about 1.6 to 1.4 to 1.6 billion Catholics across the world. And when the Pope speaks, a lot of people listen. Pope Leo is an American Pope as well, which I think introduces some interesting context. He released his first encyclical last week. So an encyclical is basically, almost think of it as like the first manifesto when in office for the Pope. And it's supposed to be addressed to the Catholic bishops across the world, but really it's addressed to all Catholics. And it's really addressing the time, like one of the key issues of the times, and how the Catholic Church is going to respond to it or not. So the previous Pope, Pope Francis, his first encyclical was all about the climate crisis. And this Pope, his encyclical is titled Magnifica Humanitas, or The Magnificence of Humans, which is an awesome title. And basically it's about AI. And I just got a few things to say about it, and then I'll throw to Leo. So a few observations, first of all. First off, really interesting where this took place. So he launched it himself in the Vatican, which he doesn't always do, surrounded by a lot of leaders from big tech, including Chris Olah, who's the co-founder of Anthropic. He says some pretty interesting things in here. I think one of the really interesting points is he's not anti-tech. He's not anti-AI. I mean, I would read the encyclical. It's interesting. There's a lot of, I was baptized a Catholic. I'm a practicing Christian. I don't really identify with Catholicism anymore, but I know a bit about theology. And the whole thing is trying to apply a theological framework to AI, which is successful in parts and which others isn't. But the broad consensus is, look, we shouldn't be ignoring AI. We should be thinking about how humankind can adapt to AI and take the benefits of AI. Makes some amazing parallels in there. Like, he talks about the slave trade. He talks about how the Catholic Church should have done more during the abolition of the slave trade, and in part was responsible for the slave trade. He talks about digital colonialism and the role that the Catholic Church should be having in fighting against that. My favorite quote in the whole thing, which I absolutely love, is he says that human dignity does not depend on a person's abilities, wealth, or position in life, nor on the right or wrong choices made. Instead, it is a gift that precedes and transcends each person. And then he goes on to say, the values of persons do not depend on what they achieve or produce. It doesn't matter if you're religious or not. I think that's an amazing thing to have, that we shouldn't be judged on output. We should be judged on being humans. So there's some great stuff in there. There's some interesting stuff in there. I thought the framing of it alongside big tech was very interesting. And then the final point for me, Leo, then I'll pass to you, is there's a lot of grandstanding in there. There's no definitive action for how this is going to come about. And what I would say, I drew parallels with Pope Francis's encyclical on the climate crisis. Again, that proved to be a lot of hot air, in my opinion. Is this actually going to be acted upon? Is this going to go beyond doctrine and into policy? Who knows? So yeah, that's my brief take with some interesting quotes, Leo. Would love to hear your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, I got a couple phone calls as well. I'll get into them. I just want to preface this by saying Anything that I'm about to say, I say it respectfully. I respect all religions, no matter where you are, what you are in the world. Doesn't matter. I believe in God. I'll just leave it at that. But basically, I just respectfully, okay? I have to preface with that. What does the Pope actually know about AI? And I discussed this with Chris from Toxics as well. So I'm just going to say in the most respectful way possible, aside from Chris Ola, who's a co-founder from Anthropic, speaking alongside him, being alongside him. I'm not saying the Pope didn't do his research. What I am saying is the Pope vibe coding in his office. So, yeah, and I think Des Kennedy was in that stream as well. He told me I should make a shirt. I might get canceled.
But what? In my head, yes, he was. He absolutely was.
Yeah. But yeah, let's move forward a little bit. So I've seen more people talking about the Pope talking about AI than actually digging into the entire transcript of everything that he said. So it's easy to be nitpicky and say that okay, but this is what stood out to me because this is what I heard from a bunch of people on other podcasts about not a direct comparison, but almost like in the same statement, comparing it to nukes. And I don't like that. I am pro AI, obviously. I do think that we're maybe a little bit lacking in regulation, obviously. But I'll just read off a couple of these quotes and then I'll get to just my quick reasoning behind that. So this is a direct quote from the Pope. The Church has long been working for nuclear disarmament, aware that every great technical power can affect people's lives, and so must be accompanied by adequate moral discernment and public control. Nuclear disarmament remains a service to peace and the dignity of human family. In a similar sense, artificial intelligence now demands to be disarmed, freed from logic that turns into an instrument of domination, exclusion, or death. So if that's not a direct comparison, it's just a follow-up to saying basically like the way that previous popes have spoken about nukes, or speaking about AI in terms of disarming it similarly. Now, my issue with that is I can fully get behind no nukes in the world. There's no reason for it. I'm not talking about nuclear energy, which if we want to get into it, yeah, that also the development of nuclear weapons also led to nuclear power, which is a great thing. But AI has a lot of benefits for humanity. There's a lot of fear mongering going around. A lot of AI will take your job, AI will end humanity, and I don't like the way that people speak about it that way. I don't want to. It may come off like I'm taking it personally, but I'm really not. I just think that it's not a good comparison. So yeah, I would hope to in the near future dig into the transcript a little bit more, dig into it a little bit more, and see what positive notes were taken about it. I know he's a pretty pro tech pope, which is a funny thing to say, but yeah, that's basically my take on it.
It's a great take, man. And I want to stand up for you as well, because Con in the chat is the interesting point he's saying about, did we understand what he wrote? We don't need to understand AI. He was talking about having a moral or ethical basics for AI. And rather than having the boys club in Silicon Valley decide the rules. Now, I don't speak for Leo, but I don't think Leo was saying that. I don't think both of us have spoken and written in the past that we want people who use AI to have a say on it. And that doesn't mean you have to have a machine learning background to be able to do that. I think what Leo's getting at is that does the Pope actually just use AI, right? That's what we mean when we're
Yeah,
talking about, does he have expertise? We're not saying he needs to have a PhD in machine learning, right?
yeah,
But I think if you're speaking about something, and again, we don't need to get deep about it, but this is where I sometimes have issues with religious leaders talking about problems, because if you haven't got lived experience of it, then maybe you're not best qualified to talk about it.
yeah. I just want to mention on that point. I'm saying this in a way where I don't think they have to be like necessarily qualified to speak about anything. You could speak about anything you want to speak about. Doesn't mean that people should listen to your opinions. The Pope has great influence, is all I'm really trying to point out. And in terms of that comment from Khan, I appreciate all the chats, obviously. But I also, like Sam just said, I did recently have an article where I spoke about there's too much centralized control over ethics in regards to AI within these big tech companies. And there needs to be more, I don't know how to put this, there needs to be control outside of a big tech, not just inside big tech, because there's a conflict of interest there, obviously.
No, for sure, man. And like, honestly, is the Pope using AI any more or less than my mum? Probably not. So do they have, which of those should we be learning? Which of those should we be listening to in terms of AI? And that's what I mean about the grandson. But again, I just want to, there's a final quote that I really like. And this is, I think this is the central, in my head, this is the central thesis of the whole encyclical, because I have gone into it in detail. He says that in practice, technology is never neutral because it takes on the characteristics of those who devise, finance, regulate, and use it. Therefore, the primary choice is not between a yes or no to technology, but rather between constructing Babel or rebuilding Jerusalem, between a power that claims to dominate the heavens and a people who work together in the presence of God to rebuild the walls of fraternal coexistence. Again, strip the spirituality out of it, strip the faith out of it, strip the religion out of it. I think that's a great statement. And it's not say it's I think how both of us stand. AI is not inherently good or evil. AI is a tool that is used by people who have the capacity to be good or evil. And yeah, I really thought that was a brilliant statement, and will be, yeah, interesting to see how it develops. And there's already like a few murmurings that big tech maybe are too happy with the direction that the Pope's started to go in since this. And yeah, we'll just be interesting to see how that goes going forward. I'll link to the encyclical in the follow-up post as well, just so people can see that. Also, just had some great feedback about out the written posts that go with this, and I'm just going to make them a wee bit shorter so that people can get what they want of the video, and then the corresponding written bit just has all of the links and a little bit more context in what we're saying as well. So we'll segue nicely into the second story then, which is about Anthropic. And for people who are not aware, on the 28th of May last week, Anthropic dropped the latest version of Claude. So Opus 4. I didn't know this until, like, I was halfway through a meeting and someone had sent me a message going, "Hey, have you tried this?" I was like, "No, I had no idea until you just told me." So they dropped Opus 4.8 last week, and there's the usual like benchmarking. Let me like, hey, what's it doing next? Like, also, there's new dynamic workflows, there's effort control in Claude the AI, it's improved misaligned behavior. That's the biggest thing, is that it's better at misaligned behavior. It's got higher stats for agentic coding, for multidisciplinary reasoning, for agentic computer use, for knowledge work. All of that. Are we actually going to be able to tell the difference between 4.7 and 4.8 in our day-to-day lives? That was interesting. For me, the biggest interest, Leo, of this whole announcement was that they're gearing up for Mythos. And in the same announcement, they basically just said that we plan to release a new class of model with even higher intelligence than Opus. As part of Project Glassroom, which we've talked about before, a small number of organizations are using the Claude Mythos preview for cybersecurity work. This is the whole model that was too dangerous to release because it found all these day zero cybersecurity vulnerabilities. And now Anthropic have suddenly said that it's not too dangerous to release and it is going to be released very soon. And I wonder, Leo, as I've spoken about, and you have as well, if this might be the signal of a forthcoming IPO. I don't know. So yeah, that's my take. Like, interesting, a new version of Claude. Is it really that much of improvement on 4.7? And actually, is the real story here that they've told us that Mythos is coming for public consumption?
Yeah. I think before I speak on Mythos, I will just say, I think the funniest part about this whole AI race is that the same companies kind of warning about how dangerous AI is are the ones that are constantly pushing to put out new models, more powerful, right? So it's take everything as a grain of salt, I would say, because obviously there's financial things involved here as well, as you mentioned, IPOs. And I will say, I speak to other creators, and a lot of my ideas, I do expand on them, but I will always shout out a creator. I don't care how many times I have to do it, whether I'm shouting out Sam in another podcast, another creator, or if I'm shouting out Chris from Toxic, which I will do again here. I spoke to him about this new Mythos-class model release. It's, yeah, I can say this with, let's say, 95% certainty. It's going to be nothing like the Mythos from Project Glasswing. It's going to be like a Mythos missing a leg and a few fingers, basically. So,
Project OS.
yeah, yeah, it's not the same. It's not going to be the same. There's obviously a lot of hype behind Mythos in general. And from speaking to insiders, the hype it's somewhat real. And the companies that have access to actual real Mythos in Project Glasswing, they know what's up. It's not going to be the same. That's why they're labeling it a Mythos-class model. And I will say also, like in a previous stream as well, and I think you know Farida Khalif, Sam, if I'm
Yeah, I know
pronouncing her name
Farida.
right.
Yeah, I know Farida. Farida's fantastic.
So she was in the chat in another stream, and she mentioned something that was so smart that I never even really thought of. Because in my head, I'm like, why are these companies releasing a model every month? What's the point? Wait a few months, give us real bigger updates. And what she mentioned was that what they're doing is they're testing it in the real world to be able to build a frontier models that will be private. And so basically, like when, for example, like Claude Opus 4.7, there was a lot of complaints going around about how 4.6 was better. I know, for example, you mentioned that you didn't really feel it. You didn't feel that way. Some people felt otherwise, but I think the whole point of it is they're testing these models out in the public so that their frontier models internally can be improved. And I think that's why that gap between publicly available models,
100%, man.
private, will grow.
Great take. And I put a post out on this last week that actually one of the things with Project Glasswing is I found 10,000 bugs, right? But these were bugs in open source software that people use every day and that's mainly maintained by volunteers across the internet, right? And then all of a sudden, these like real heroes of like genuine heroes of the internet, they're getting like thousands of error reports being like, can you fix this bug? And they're like, dude, I do this in my spare time. No, and help me. And I put a post out about this last week just saying, look, it's all well and good, Project Glasswing finding these security issues for companies like Mozilla or Cloudflare who've actually got engineers to fix it. But what about the GitHub packages that a couple of people maintain? And how are they coping with it? And got a really cool comment that feeds into this. This is from Jim North, who's a great reader. He has a Substack called Transmitting in the Blind. And I'll just read it because I think it's interesting. So as well as what I said, he said, there's another cost here that is being deliberately obfuscated by Anthropic. It's the same cost that's obfuscated by the frontier model companies from day one, which is the true cost of using a trillion parameter model. Anthropic is absorbing, i.e. hiding, the inference costs. Inference cost just means the costs of using something rather than training it, of scanning open source libraries and subsidizing this cost to the tune of $100 million for enterprise users of Claude security, so Project Glasswing, all ahead of an upcoming IPO. Why? Because as many large companies are starting to report, when you have to pay the actual cost per million tokens, the price tag and the negative return on investment are impossible to ignore. And I just thought that was such a sharp take that all of this stuff, like Project Glasswing included, it's a tale as old as time. It's a loss leader. They're not telling us how much it costs because it's astronomical. And they're waiting to say, this is something that we need, in my opinion, this is something that we need to subsume into our workflows and our processes in order to catch these issues. I'm not saying manufacturing a problem, but maybe pointing out problems that could be addressed or never needed to be addressed, because then they have the solution. And once those workflows are in place, once we need the IPO, maybe those enterprise prices might suddenly escalate. So yeah, I just thought that was a brilliant take and just feeds into this whole thing. And yeah, as someone I really did, Kunshawn said Mythos Lite. That's what we should call it, right? Mythos
Yeah.
Lite. It's a great name for it.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, people just keep an eye on it. Both of us would love to hear if you've had experiences of using the new version of Claude, what you think Mythos Lite is going to be like. And also, if anyone can beat my projection of the IPO for Anthropic's coming in October. Like, I've said that so many times that I waited for people to just call me out on it in October. I'm fairly confident on that. So moving into our third story then, and this is all about Tony Blair. So, we had the Pope. And oh God, Tony Blair would love me comparing him to the Pope. But basically, we had the Pope weighing in on AI, and now we've got Tony Blair weighing in on AI. So for people who don't know, Tony Blair was the leader of the UK government from 1997 to the mid 2000s. He was the former head of the Labour government. He stepped down from office, passed on to Gordon Brown, and then the Labour Party lost and the Conservatives got in. And since then, he actually did something that's quite strangely, or he completely walked away like from actual frontline politics, which doesn't normally happen. Like in the UK, there's like kind of a long history of people that have been prime ministers staying and doing work in the backbenches and stuff. He stood down and he set up something called the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. He did loads of work in the Middle East and stuff like that. And it's a not-for-profit organization that I will front end by saying that receives hundreds of millions of dollars in donations from the Bill Gates Foundation, from Oracle, from other big tech companies. And Tony Blair, for context, I won't get into my opinions on him, but he has always had tech as a solution, like so pro-tech. Like, people are misbehaving in the UK. Let's bring in digital identification. The NHS is in trouble. Let's waste billions of dollars in building an NHS infrastructure that doesn't work across IT systems. And then now I want to read you the title of his latest paper. The Labour Party is playing with fire over its future and the future of the country. Very incendiary. I don't think he really gets on with Keir Starmer, who's the current leader of the UK government and leader of the Labour Party. Loads of interesting stuff in here. Just two things from me. One, he says something genuinely insane. He says that the UK should accelerate the use of North Sea gas and oil reserves so that we can pay for AI and data centers to become an AI superpower, or to help us facilitate becoming an AI superpower. This is at a time when the UK is, I think, rightfully making the pivot towards green tech. So I genuinely think that was an insane thing to say, and also has caused so many problems because the UK has huge net zero targets and the two of them are not compatible. Again, can get into the details here. The UK has the third largest number of data centers in the world. America has about 530. Germany has about 54. The UK has about 52, I think, something like that, or maybe 126, 123, something like that. But the UK has zero, and that's zero AI models of note. The US has about 54. So we're building data centers to train somebody else's AI models. Interesting. And then the final thing I'll say here is that you need to always follow the money. Tony Blair, it's on record. I'm not making this up. His organization gets hundreds of millions of dollars from big tech. His son, Ewan Blair, I'll just leave this as a side note, also runs a education big tech company that has received millions of dollars from big tech. So as a non-UK citizen, would love to hear your take on what I've just said there, basically.
Yeah. Without getting too political, I don't know too much about Tony Blair, Keir Starmer. I see things on the news, but I'm not going to get into that too much. But I just will mention, as of now, just as a side note, it seems like Europe in general, not just the UK, is very reliant on foreign energy, foreign cloud infrastructure, and haven't really built out those systems too much for themselves. Kind of like Sam just mentioned, the UK has zero AI models, yet they're still building some data centers, and you said they're number 3 on the list, correct?
Yeah,
In terms
number
of
3.
data
So yeah,
centers.
about 124. Sorry, not 54, about 124, just behind Germany. Still an order of magnitude behind you guys.
And in order to, I guess, maybe keep up, I think this comes back into a kind of a take that I had in a previous stream, which is I think there's a way to move forward in this race, which nobody's going to stop. I don't think this is a political matter. I mean, in the UK, it's the Labour Party and this and that, and over here, it's the Republicans and the Democrats. I think that's all just like everything that's going to be happening behind the curtains, I think is going to happen regardless of political party. The US wants to win the race, China wants to win the race, and I think that the UK, maybe, guys, try not to get left behind. So that basically my main take is this, which I've mentioned before, and I did get some backlash for this later on, but I'll say it again because I think I don't really care. I think the best way to move forward in the race is to deregulate AI in the private sector, meaning for governments and for corporations, and regulate it for the public. And I think that's already happening. It is already happening, and it's the clear way forward because as these models get stronger and stronger, releasing them to the public fully is dangerous. And there's only going to be a few handful of corporations that are going to have the strongest models, and governments as well. So I think like all I'm really saying is comparing it as well to the UK and Europe in general being very reliant on foreign energy, foreign cloud. At least you guys have some more data centers going on, which I know a lot of people dislike data centers as well. but I think that's the way to move forward.
I think that's interesting, man. And since you said that, I've been reflecting on it a lot. I don't know why you get pushback on it because I think that deregulating enterprise makes a lot of sense and keeping the regulation on citizens makes a lot of sense as well. And as I pointed to before, John Bruton on operating on Substack and you and others just speak to this is how it works in economic circles and this is how things become viable as well. Alex makes a really good point that I think the best way forward is to build AI systems that are aligned by construction to ethical regulations. Totally agree with this. I've been doing a lot of work on data centers recently, Leo, and not building them, by the way, just researching them. And some great points have come in that I don't have answers to. Like, why don't they have solar panels as part of them, right? Like, why don't the water consumption of data centers is a huge issue. Surely there must be a way of building them like with a desalination plant attached to them so you can use the water from the sea, right? Massive for at the moment in the Republic of Ireland because it's the data centers there that they're basically draining billions of pounds out of the Irish economy because data centers might need to exist, but you can't allow the data centers to pay a fraction of the electricity costs of a normal citizen because otherwise they're the ones that have to be resilient. Yeah. So I think there's ways around this and there's ways to do it in a meaningful way. And I would just like us to focus the UK on if we're serious about being an AI superpower, there's two ways of doing it, in my opinion. One, build more frontier models. Not going to happen. We had Google DeepMind, which was so big. And then, so we had DeepMind, sorry, and then that got bought out by Google, right? Which is now an American rather than a UK thing. The second thing is, why not build the infrastructure that surrounds it? Yeah. Why not be the people to come to for the ethics, for the governance, for the economics as well, right? Like for the humans in the loop. I think that element of it we could be really smart in building around that. At the moment, I feel a little bit like we're building the infrastructure to support other people accelerating in the AI race whilst claiming to be a superpower. And again, despite what Alex says, everything's political. We don't need to get political here, but there is that element of the UK being the US's lapdog to some extent. And much as I love you guys over the pond, I think we can not break free of that yoke, but work our own direction that can provide complementary skill sets to what's there as well. So moving on then to our fourth story, it's Sam Altman, one of our favorite people. So he, Altman basically, he told the Commonwealth Bank of Australia on the 26th of May, there will be no AI jobs apocalypse, and he is delighted to be wrong. I'll just quote. He said that he thought there would be more impact on entry-level white-collar jobs being eliminated now than has actually happened. This is despite in 2022, the same Sam Altman publicly warning of mass white-collar job losses. So let's look at the other statistics. We've talked about this in the past quite a lot. And again, this is without hyperbole. This is just actual work. So there was a Oliver Wyman survey showing that CEOs in America, 43% of them, of those surveyed, plan on cutting junior level entry jobs because of AI up from 17% last year. Okay. So I would say that AI is cutting jobs. AI is changing jobs. I'm not saying there's going to be a job apocalypse. I'm saying that it's definitely changing. And the other thing I wanted to say before I pass on is Leo and I always talk about watch what people do, not what they say. This is the same Sam Altman who promised us that OpenAI would always be a not-for-profit organization, who promised us that ChatGPT would never have adverts, and who 4 years ago confidently predicted that AGI would be here within 4 years. Is this a fourth promise he's gonna break, Leo? What do you think?
Yeah. It wouldn't be the first time a big tech company makes a promise and falls behind. It's just Sam Alt. But with AI being the hot topic, no one's really talking about Apple anymore. So I will mention I spoke about AI doomers in a podcast with Daniel Nest. And I think that the socioeconomic doomers are the ones that concern me the most. And my reason for that is, and I actually like that Sam is moving backwards on this a little bit. It shows that he's grown, I think, and I like it. So economic doomers basically saying that AI will take all jobs and no one's going to work. I think they're doing an incredible disservice to society. I think it's very dangerous. And if I was a young man or woman or anybody in college right now, I would be very concerned. And I feel for them. And I think it's doing such a disservice to society because you're telling young people that their choice of job or profession, it won't be needed. And the danger in that is when 5 years, 10 years later down the line, when we do still need them, we've just reduced that funnel towards that profession. And it's not just software engineers. I've heard some people talk about how we won't need radiologists. So what happens down the line when there's no radiologists now? Because you said that AI could do their job. That's going to be a real problem. So that's like my main take on the whole situation. So I do that Sam is going back on this. And basically, yeah, no one can tell the future. Whether you're an insider in big tech, whether you're Sam Altman, Dario Modi, these are all opinions, but they're speaking on them so confidently, almost as confident as when you're speaking to a chatbot and it hallucinates an answer. Like it's nobody knows. So that's my
Mhm.
take.
It's a fair take. And Alex, yeah, we're totally in agreement with you. All these topics are about AI and they're all political. I think what Leo and I would like to see is that things are become apolitical, in that these are things that should transcend political parties, but they're so inherent to what we do. The thing I'd only push back slightly, Leo, I agree with you, by the way, and I think that doomerism's insane. I've got a piece coming out on Wednesday about the US college rebellion and like how I see why they've been doing what they've been doing. But I think that, yes, it's good that Sam Altman's rolled back on what he said. And I think great leaders are not afraid to change their positions based on the facts. But I think that, again, I think there's an IPO coming. I think he's saying this because he wants to assure the markets before he floats. So we'll see. We'll see. We'll just see how it pans out, right?
Yeah, I will just mention on that. I think in terms of the IPOs, I think it's actually doing him a disservice to saying that in terms of an IPO. Because if you're looking at how these companies are being priced to IPO, they're being priced to replace the entire workforce. They're not being priced based on how much money they're making. Yeah, great. Like Anthropic went profitable and made a few $100 million. I'm talking about a few $100 million like it's nothing. It's a great sum of money, but
It's not the $1 trillion IPO, though, right?
it's nothing when you want to IPO at a trillion something dollars. Like you're basically saying my company's being released to the public markets worth whatever. SpaceX AI $2 trillion or OpenAI 1 trillion, whatever it's going to be. That is not based in reality. That's based on not even future earnings. That's based on projections of literally replacing the entire workforce. So I think that to in terms of IPOing specifically, like if you're going to say that we're not going to replace the entire workforce, then why are you worth a trillion?
It's a fair point, man. That's a really fair point. Okay, so moving on to our last story then, and this is again a UK story, and Caro and I in the chat have been talking a little. I've been alluding towards Animal Farm, so George Orwell, and this last story is, for my mind, ripped straight out of 1984. Again, a hugely political issue. And people have opinions on asylum seekers and immigration. That's okay. I want everyone to set that to one side for a second and just consider the humanity here. Basically, the UK is trialing AI software at its borders on asylum seekers that claim to be children to see if they actually are children. Now, I'll be fair, Leo, there is an actual issue here. So no matter what your opinion on asylum seeking and immigration, okay, I think last year the Home Office interviewed 16,000 asylum seekers who claimed to be children, and 43% of them weren't actually children. They were claiming to be children because it's easier to get into the UK if you're a child. Now, if I was in that position, would I be lying? Of course I would be. I'm, again, happened to be born by complete fluke in the UK into a white, heterosexual, cisgendered, middle-class background, the epicenter of privilege. So in my opinion, if I was in those people's positions, I would be doing the same. Now, I understand, though, that there is an issue with potential asylum seekers lying or telling the truth about their status. I understand that's an issue. But what the Home Office is proposing is that they're going to be using technology untested, without consent, to basically scan children, people who claim to be children, to see if they really are children or not. That is insane. And for me, two things. One, these are people, they're human beings that are seeking asylum from war-torn countries and other horrible injustices. And two, even if you don't care about all of that, which is interesting, you have to remember that this is a trial, and it's not, if the UK government is willing to do this to children of asylum seekers, how far before they do it to UK citizens? So they're the two takes for me, just that it's genuinely terrifying, not just because of the lack of humanity, but also because for me, this is a very dangerous step in terms of mass surveillance. Yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on that, Leo.
Yeah, that's a great take. I'm just going to use this quote from your story, Sam. I know you have references for this, which you'll include later, but it has to do with the numbers you just mentioned. So in the year ending March 2026, 6,400 child migrants were age assessed at the UK border. 43% were found to be adults, but the same Home Office report also documents children wrongly classified as adults, right? So obviously humans make mistakes. AI makes mistakes. Humans are biased. AI is biased because it's built by humans. So that's basically my preface to what I'm going to say here, which is I think that the use of AI in certain systems, the people that are against it aren't necessarily against it because it's AI. I think they're against it because of their political biases. Now, this is a very touchy subject because we're talking about child migrants here, escaping places in the world that they're being persecuted. I think in the long run, we'll just have to see who's going to actually do a better job. Is it going to be the machines or the humans? And I know this in the story was also mentioned that this model that's being used was trained in bars to see if people are old enough to drink, right? Probably not the best training method for something like this. So that's a tough one. But yeah, I will say, yeah, humans make mistakes, AI make mistakes. And when we're talking about something like this, I don't even think this should be a political matter. It's turned into a political matter, and everything has become political, and I don't like it. We could talk about things without getting into politics. A child's life is worth the same anywhere in the world. And yeah, it's a tough situation, but if AI will end up doing a better job at this, then it is what it is. It's going to be implemented, whether people like it or not.
Exactly. And I love the point that Alex made that the UK is considering to use statistical AI to reject people at the border. This is a technology that's known to hallucinate confident answers, right? And that's a choice. So we know that hallucinations happen. And again, I'm oversimplifying here, but basically, the AI is going to look at a child, and if it's not certain, it's not going to say, I'm not certain. It's just going to go one way or the other. And the fact that it's trained on people in bars is insane, like genuinely insane. Like, just break that down logically, take all of the politics out of it, and just think, I am training a model on people in a bar, and I'm using that training data to British children in a British bar. I'm using that training data to assess children from other countries, different skin colors, different facial structures, different genetics, different everything. How is that? It shouldn't be a political issue. It should just be a logical, what are you doing? The humanity aside, what you've progressed as a workflow doesn't even make any sense whatsoever. So yeah, I have said insane quite a lot of times, Caro, sorry, this podcast. But yeah, I think this is a genuinely worrying story. And I would encourage people to look it up themselves. I don't want to speak for Leo, but I think certainly what I do, and I think what Leo does as well, is we try to present the facts as we see them, our opinions on them, but ultimately you need to go away and look at this for yourself and make your own opinions and see what you feel comfortable with and what you don't feel comfortable with. Again, I think both of us feel there's certain red lines that are just objective and not subjective at all. And for me, this story is one of them. So yeah, as JC says, teaching AI to say, I'm not sure, I don't work, was a huge breakthrough for my work. Absolutely. And for people who use AI, I use Claude, hard coded in my Claude MD file at the top is, if you don't know, tell me you don't know. And I'm sure Leah has something similar in his ChatGPT memory file as well. It's not going to work all the time, but it's a good rule of thumb. So just a reminder that we have a YouTube channel, or Leo has a YouTube channel, Exploring ChatGPT, which this podcast features in. Please do check that out. Leo does a great work a great job in putting that together. Thank you, everyone, for listening. In a few hours or so, we'll put forward like the accompanying written piece for this, which will be a bit shorter than usual, just because that's what the feedback we've been getting. And yeah, just to reach out to say if there's topics people want to see covered that next week, just feel free to DM Leo or me or send us a note or something like that. And yeah, thanks for a really engaged dialogue in the chat today. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Leo.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Stay safe, be well, and go slow.